The university was located on a distant, high-tech station, orbiting a planet so remote that few had even heard of it, nestled in the heart of a sector that saw minimal traffic from the galactic core. The station itself, a sprawling, gleaming structure of shining metals and transparent viewing ports, was home to the most prestigious institution in the known galaxy, a school where the brightest minds from countless species gathered to learn, to push the boundaries of knowledge, and to test themselves in ways that most could never fathom. This was no ordinary academic institution. It was a place where the most difficult and grueling intellectual challenges were posed to students, and where only those capable of extraordinary intelligence and perseverance were given the privilege of graduating. The tests given here were legendary for their difficulty, with students sometimes spending entire lifetimes trying to pass them. They were meant to be the pinnacle of intellectual achievement, comprehensive exams that not only tested knowledge, but also adaptability, logic, creativity, and, most importantly, the ability to thrive under pressure. Passing one of these tests meant being inducted into the upper echelons of the intellectual elite, a recognition that would ensure a lifetime of accolades, influence, and respect. Among the students who came to this university were beings from every corner of the galaxy, ranging from beings that were little more than walking, talking plants to highly evolved, super-intelligent species that could manipulate the very fabric of reality itself. There were organic life forms with tentacles, creatures with crystalline structures, and intelligent gaseous beings that had to be housed in special containment units. But despite the diversity of these species, there was one thing they all had in common. They were the best of the best. But there was one student who had stood out for reasons that no one had anticipated. His name was Rin, a young human who had been accepted to the university against all odds. The human race, despite its burgeoning presence across the galaxy, was still viewed with a mix of curiosity and skepticism by many of the more established and sophisticated species. Humanity was known for their resilience and their relatively short history of technological development compared to other species in the galaxy, but their reputation as a young, somewhat primitive species often led to the dismissal of their potential. To many, humans were still seen as an upstart race, barely out of the primal phase and still wrestling with their own survival in the vastness of space. Rin had come to this station not because he was born into wealth or political power, but because he had proven himself in other ways by surviving what most considered the impossible. He came from a planet known as Earth, a death world that was so hostile to life that survival itself was an ongoing battle. Earth was known for its extreme climates, savage ecosystems, and dangerous creatures. The word Deathworld had been coined by other species to describe the planet because of its unrelenting and brutal nature. It was a place where the strongest and most adaptable could survive, and where the weak would quickly perish. From the moment he was born, Rin had learned to fight for his survival. He had learned to think quickly, to innovate, and to adapt faster than any other being could possibly imagine. And now, he was here among the brightest minds in the galaxy, against the expectations of many who doubted him. His reputation as a Deathworlder preceded him, but the professors who had heard of him had assumed he was simply another brute, someone who had survived through raw strength, primal instincts, and a basic understanding of the world around him. They didn't know the full extent of his mind, of his ability to think, reason, and tackle intellectual challenges with a perspective they could never comprehend. But Rin would soon prove them wrong. The test he would soon face was considered by many to be a trial that could last a lifetime, a challenge that only a few individuals in the history of the galaxy had ever even attempted. It was called the Ascension Test, and it was designed to measure the intellectual and psychological limits of any being who dared to attempt it. The test was designed by an ancient race known as the Zyphar, a species long thought extinct but whose legacy lived on in the advanced knowledge they had left behind. The Zyphar had crafted the ascension test as a way to gauge the intellectual potential of any species, using it to determine who among the galactic populace was worthy of ascending to a higher level of existence, whether that meant joining the Zyphar themselves or gaining access to the ancient knowledge they had left scattered across the galaxy. The test was unlike anything anyone had ever encountered. It was a multi-layered examination that tested a being's intellect, memory, physical endurance, emotional stability, and adaptability. The test consisted of several challenges, riddles that were impossible to solve, puzzles that required multi-dimensional thinking, situations that forced the participant to make morally ambiguous decisions, and even physical feats that seemed designed to break a person's spirit. The ascension test was not a one-time trial but a series of tests, each harder than the last, each designed to push the participant to their absolute limits. Many of the brightest minds from various species had attempted the test, but only a handful had ever completed it, and even fewer had ever emerged unchanged. Rin, with his background as a survivor of Earth's Deathworld, had not only the mental acuity to face the test, but the resilience to endure the hardships that it would throw at him. He had been selected to take the ascension test as part of an initiative to see how a human would fare when pitted against the galaxy's most difficult intellectual challenges. Some viewed his participation as a grand experiment, while others regarded it as an impossible feat that would likely end in failure. The first stage of the ascension test was deceptively simple. The students were placed in a large, empty chamber, devoid of any features or markings, and were instructed to wait. For hours, there was nothing but silence. The room remained empty and nothing happened. But Rin, unlike the others, didn't grow frustrated. He knew that nothing in the Zyphar tests was as it seemed. The empty space, he realized, was a puzzle in itself. After an hour of contemplation, he began testing the walls, searching for hidden switches or subtle differences in the surface that could indicate something hidden beneath. Eventually, after a series of small, deliberate movements, he found a concealed panel. It was simple logic, but it was the first step toward showing the professors that he wasn't just a simple Deathworlder. He was a thinker. Stage after stage, Rin faced challenges that would have driven most participants to madness. He solved riddles based on quantum mechanics that twisted his perception of space and time. He navigated virtual labyrinths that changed and restructured themselves with each new step, forcing him to think several moves ahead. He faced moral dilemmas that made him question his very understanding of right and wrong, choosing between saving an innocent being or condemning an entire society to destruction. What astonished the alien professors the most was Rin's ability to navigate each of these challenges with an almost innate understanding of strategy, resourcefulness, and balance. While other participants, some of them from species with centuries of knowledge and experience, struggled and faltered, Rin's resolve seemed unwavering. His human ingenuity, which had been honed in the harshest of environments, allowed him to excel. His mind, sharpened by his upbringing on a world where survival was a daily fight, quickly adapted to each new layer of the test, and he pushed himself to the limit, not just in intellect but in emotional control and resilience. The professors, who had watched many species struggle with the test, began to grow uneasy. They had underestimated the human race, assuming that Rin's only strength would be his physical abilities and basic survival instincts. But now, as he aced test after test, they realized the full scope of his capabilities. His solutions were not just practical, they were elegant, creative, and deeply insightful. Where others had failed by overcomplicating things, Rin succeeded by thinking outside the box. Where others had tried to brute force their way through, he applied patience and methodical reasoning. The final stage of the test was the most harrowing. It involved a complex mental simulation, one that combined all of the previous tests into a single, ever-changing challenge. It was designed to break the will of even the strongest participants, creating a scenario in which the mind would bend and eventually break under the strain of multiple simultaneous crises. But Rin, having survived so many challenges on Earth, met the simulation with calm. He applied the lessons he had learned throughout the test and solved the impossible puzzle in a fraction of the time expected. When the simulation ended and the chamber lights finally returned to normal, the alien professor stood in stunned silence. The test was over. Rin had not only completed it, he had aced it. His success shattered their preconceived notions about humanity and what they were capable of. It was a humbling moment for the professors, who had spent their entire lives believing that their species were the ultimate intellectual authorities. But here was a human and alien in their eyes who had passed the most difficult intellectual test in the galaxy with ease. He had proven that the human race, despite its relatively short history, had the potential to rise to greatness, far surpassing even the most advanced and highly evolved civilizations. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Rin, the human from Earth, had accomplished the impossible. He had completed the ascension test, something no one had thought a human could do, and in doing so, he had redefined humanity's place in the galaxy. But Rin's victory wasn't just about passing a test. It was about proving that no matter how small a species might seem in the vastness of the universe, no matter how young or unrefined their civilization may appear, they could always rise to greatness. Rin's triumph was a testament to the resilience of humanity, to the indomitable spirit that had helped them survive and thrive on a hostile, unforgiving world. And with that victory, humanity's place in the galaxy was forever changed. The professors, once skeptical, now looked at Rin not just as an anomaly, but as a symbol of what humanity could accomplish when pushed to its limits. And as Rin left the chamber, a sense of quiet pride filled him. He hadn't just passed a test, he had made history,